Hello everyone, my name is Dariusz Śpiewak, I'm from the PIG, it's a Polish IT chamber, and I'm also representing the hub GAIA-X in Poland, and I welcome you on the panel which we discussed the cloud as an opportunity to accelerate the digital transformation of the economy. I would like to present all the panelists. Francesco, could you say a few words about yourself?
Thank you, Dariusz. This is Francesco Bonfiglio. I'm the CEO of GAIA-X and very pleased to be here today with you.
And Robert Kroplewski, could you say a few words?
Thank you for the invitation. My name is Robert Kroplewski. I'm a plenipotentiary of Minister of Digital Affairs for Information Society in Poland. And my everyday duty is a convergence of technology, especially oriented on artificial intelligence in Poland. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for your presentation. And I would like to ask Michał Żyliński to say a few words about yourself, about your company.
Hello, I'm Michał Żyliński. I'm managing customer engineering team in Hubu, Poland. The purpose of the team is to support local biggest customers, mostly enterprise ones.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we are going to discuss about the opportunity which cloud provides for us as a digital environment. The first main question is to Francesco. You are from the GAIA-X, from the new project. It's quite new project in Europe. It's about the development of standards and best practices in the field of the cloud computing. So my question is, and please about the honest answer, do you believe that there is a possibility to reconcile the idea of digital sovereignty with the desire for unlimited profit promoted by the greatest technological players? Could you show us your perspective about it?
Yeah, thank you, Darius, for the question. It's a very good one. And of course, the answer can only be yes. There is a chance to reconcile the ambition for, unlimited earning and the need for sovereignty. But let me explain why. First of all, GAIA-X is trying to build a new generation of cloud and data platforms. Let's call them digital platforms, but cloud is a very broad term. Cloud per se is useless, is not producing any value. But without the cloud, we couldn't have any data economy. So that's why we're thinking about the cloud. But what is the problem of the cloud today? The problem of the cloud is that without cloud, you cannot have any digital platform. Without digital platforms, you have no control on anything. And we know even more now, we hoped that the pandemic was kind of over and we were going to return into the old normal, but it looks like the new normal is going to be changing over and over. So we are now seeing and facing a new normal that takes into account also the conflict that is producing even more awareness of the need for sovereign platforms. Why sovereign platforms? Because without digital sovereign platforms, there is no political sovereignty. In other words, there is no control of any economy, of any security, of any public utility, any transportation. But the problem that we had before all these huge crises that we are living in these days and weeks was that the people did not trust the existing digital platforms. Why they didn't trust them? Because they were not providing a sufficient level of transparency, so inspectability, what am I buying, and controllability. So what GAIA-X wants to do is to produce a new generation, or to enable the production of a new generation of digital platforms that are sovereign, where sovereignty means three words: transparency, controllability, interoperability. Now, these three words are necessary because without these three fundamental characteristics, industries and even more individuals will not share their data anymore on platforms that do not expose these characteristics. Second point is the data is becoming distributed, so cannot be concentrated in single places, even them being huge. It's not working anymore. So we need to connect data from all over the world in a seamless way. We need to bring the compute to the data instead of the other way around. And we need to do it even more on trusted platforms. So we need to use platforms that we trust so that we want to share the data. So the combination of these two big needs, the need for a new distributed cloud and the need for a new sovereign, meaning transparent, controllable, and interoperable kind of cloud, create a new generation of digital platforms that are distributed, interconnected, securely, trusted, and therefore it produces a new opportunity for the market. In other words, if you want to make business in the future, forget about being the sole sourcer like today. If you believe you can still be the only one because you're big and you can control all the data, try to keep them all for yourself, you're not going to win the market, because the market challenge will be the opposite. You have to be integrated, open, and try to be the winner in a new market that is competing on different types of needs. That's why there is an opportunity to change, let me say, the leadership of Europe, not just in Europe, but in the global market, because digital is a global market by definition. So we are not trying to build something for Europe only, but there is also a need for the current dominant incumbent operators to change their business strategies, because they would not work in the world of the present and for sure of the future. So yes, there is a possibility, and we are pursuing this possibility very actively within GAIA-X. And the last thing I wanted to say is that there is an opportunity also for all countries and all company sizes. Europe is characterized by fragmented geographies, multiple countries of even small size, like Poland, Estonia, etc. And now with this new, let me say, generation of digital platforms, there is an opportunity. There's an opportunity for those players and those countries that used to be small and not competitive, because now they can become competitive, because they can become part of network of federations of a larger new generation of digital platform. This is what GAIA-X enables. We are creating the glue to join the dots across small technology providers, small data owners, in order to let them exchange data and infrastructure in a safe way and in a scalable way to become competitive in the global market. That was not possible before. So yes, I believe there is an opportunity.
This is the perspective of GAIA-X. I discussed also this topic with Robert a few days ago, and you, Robert, as the proxy of Minister of Digitalization, you are focused on the technology convergence, and I know that you are deeply involved in the processes to establish the equal access to the data, availability for the small, medium, and big companies to have, let's say, equal rules to share the data. Could you present your perspective, how from your side, from the perspective of regulation, it would work? Is it possible or not?
Thank you for the question, also very important, and thank you, Francesco, for introduction in the GAIA-X framework. Even that, I think it is possible, but we have some layers very important, and from that some layers, from the point of view, we need to have a different response. First layer, of course, is a cloud edge federation. It's like that, and of course, it's needed. Europe needs to create a trusted space. And if we talk about the sovereignty without the trust doesn't work for market, doesn't work for SMEs, doesn't work even for the owners of cloud and edge infrastructure. Why? We have a expertise, our Warsaw School of Economics, and we have evidence that any possessor of data, if they, for example, only decide to monopolize data, monopolize digital space for access, that is a beginning even for them of innovation depth. It's not only a question about the sharing of data and creation of the commercialization access of data, but also the question about collaboration. We believe that we don't need to compete on access to data, but compete on the intellectual property produced or distilled from data, and of course the mind, the knowledge. And finally, of course, Europe needs to build a trusted space with compliance framework in front of any other clouds federation. Why? Because we, of course, need to create our own ecosystem and productive ecosystem in Europe, in any countries. Only the risky thing is that producing one federation, we need to think how to not divide the market internally, how to engage the member states to work together on the same equal rules, and this is the macroeconomic point of view, but from the microeconomic point of view, how to create an ecosystem which ensure the autonomy of SMEs, for example, yes, and the scalability of case study standards on mutual recognition rule. If we talk about the interoperability, it's that layer is very important. Of course, it's a key pillar if we build the sovereignty in Europe. But in the same moment, any rules of interoperability could not be a blocker for productivity, any SMEs, any companies. This is our point of view, and that perspective enable us to think that the cooperation among many actors is possible for building the productivity of economy of Europe. But one thing I need to underline more. I invite many people during my discussion since many years don't think about ownership, right of ownership of data. That kind of legal perspective doesn't exist in any legal system around the world. And if we think that anybody could have the right of ownership of data, it's an old perspective, not productive. Finally, it is a momentum and element of brokerage of market. We need to share the data. We need to share the access to the data on the trusted framework. And finally, we need to build the cyber trusted data spaces. This is the thing for Europe from our perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. This is very, let's say, legal perspective and very essential for the data sharing. And now we have a let's say European perspective. It's also especially nowadays important to the discussion about the data sovereignty. We have a local, let's say, country perspective about the data. And Michał, you're representing Google as a global player and global perspective. Let's say data and cloud services is something basic for you and for your company. Could you present your perspective? What about this let's say data sovereignty, data sharing based on some rules? How Google can support this way of building the economy? What's your let's say reflection on that?
Sure. So let's maybe start with the trust, right? Because we've heard already that what it takes is definitely some amount of trust. When it comes to Google services, I would definitely say that we have this trust already, right? Having billions of users of multiple different services like YouTube, Gmail, Google Search, etc. At least in consumer space, this trust is already there. We may not call it cloud, right? Because this is not started as cloud, but the consumer space is already, I think, addressed to some extent at least. And then when it comes to trust, I'm in the cloud industry for more than 10 years already, and I know how hard it is to gain trust in businesses, both small ones and big ones. So the more parties are there, the more federators those services are, the more challenges with regards to building this sense of trust. Because it's basically, a human thing to gain trust. It takes time. Obviously, you need to define the borders, of trust, etc., right? So this is something worth mentioning. On the other hand, we are talking about data sharing, but on the on the opposite side, there is a data privacy, right? So obviously, it would be good to somehow define the rules of data sharing, but we need to consider, data privacy first, right? This is non-negotiable, I believe, in current circumstances. So from any, cloud provider, be it commercial or government, it simply there is no space for negotiation here. The good thing about technology is that probably as the rest of the cloud vendors, the data sharing idea is becoming very hot topic. So we are investing a lot in technology, pure technology, enabling our users and the other users to exchange the data that they collect, and also we contribute to it as well, right? So these data exchanges, data marketplaces will sooner or later become hopefully a commodity, and this is a trend that I'm seeing already.
Regarding the building the data, Francesco, you mentioned that there is a plan, there is an agenda in GAIA-X. Could you, let's say, present us what is your, let's say, what will be the next steps? I know that there is a plan about the, if we look at the data sharing, about how to present the services, how to build these federation services, and build it based on the labeling system, labeling data systems. Could you present us this, let's say, agenda, timeline, and the solution, the idea which is behind the data labeling or service labeling?
Yeah, I would try to squeeze the state of the art in a few words. But first of all, let me say that we have all largest technology players in the association working together with us. So that's important, that what I'm saying is not secret, not exclusive. And actually, we are building something, I always say, from Europe, for Europe and beyond. In a nutshell, GAIA-X has got a letter X, which has got two boundaries. The lower boundaries is the infrastructure ecosystems. The upper boundary is the data space ecosystems. So this is to explain what we aim to. So we want to build data space ecosystems, which means create common places where actors in the same value chain, supply chain, you can imagine in the public or private sector, can share and exchange their data in a safe and secure environment, trusted because they agreed upon the rules of exchange. It must be mutual. And Robert was making a very important point. I would not exchange my data if I don't get equal value out of it. So that's what we're building. What we do there is a lot of projects. We call them lighthouse, but now the lighthouse is gone. And real projects in different domains. There's one in the automotive space, another one in the healthcare space, one in the tourism space, one in the agriculture space. This project comes from members that are working in the regional hubs we have. We have 15 hubs now. So maybe an idea can start from Germany and then will be expanded across France, Italy, Poland, etc. And this is the case, for example, of Catena-X, which is the creation of a common data space across the automotive market, where you can imagine all the OEMs of the automotive are becoming part of it, because it's understood that there is no way you can build value or even optimize your processes unless you create a virtual place where the supply chain is totally seamless, transparent, and shared. Other examples, like I said, in the healthcare, I cannot explain, how important is having a common data space in healthcare. We all come from 2 years of pandemic without creating, even on the fly, some sort of healthcare data space. We wouldn't simply be vaccinated or even start traveling with a green pass, regardless of what people may think about that. That was an example of how digital platforms and data space can help real life. On the bottom part of the X, we have the infrastructure. So we are starting to create projects to federate existing infrastructures. In the middle, we are creating these federation services. What are these federation services? These are services that constitute a sort of PaaS. Let me call it in cloud terms. It's a platform like a service. And there is services to manage the identity, so ensure the identity of who provides the service, and services that provide the controllability of the service itself, services that provide the compliance verification, services that provide the searchability through common catalogs, etc. What we are focusing now, and in Q1, Q2 of 22, is the creation of what we call trust framework. In other words, the first thing, the most important thing you have to do is, how do I make my service GAIA-X compliant? Compliance means trusted and labeled. The trust is mandatory, is important, because if you are not trusted, it means you are not transparent and controllable. The label is not compulsory, but it is extremely important, because the label is a set of rules. So it's a rule set that is verified and tells the users that that service is labeled, so fulfills a set of conformance requirements that are specified by one minister, more than another minister, one trade association, more than whoever wants to define a label. So that we want to translate the concept of trust that is very inflection. I agree with what Michał and Robert said, but me personally, I would like to move from a concept of trust where trust is driven by brand or perception into a world where trust is driven by objective and measurable and comparable parameters. That's what we are working on now. And in the next 6 months, we will focus on implementing this trust framework. It's, as you can imagine, a set of technology components based on the very edge technologies, verifiable credentials on the W3C, digital signatures, compute to data, and of course, blockchain and other technologies, because what we are building is a totally decentralized architecture. So it's like the internet is not owned by the association or any specific owner, is owned by the network of the participants. Mm-hmm. That's the target of the next 6 months. And in parallel, we are developing we are developing real projects in the business, not research and development, business projects that will see the light. This is the target of our plan by the end of this year. So people will start to see and touch with their hands what GAIA-X means and what difference we can introduce.
Great. This is the great project, great perspective. And this is the one this is the let's say economy perspective. And on the other hand, we have the regulation, which will establish some basics, some indication how we can manage this. And Robert, you are involved in the process of regulation creation and building some recommendation and building the local, involved in the on the European level. How can you could you indicate us what will be essential and which regulation, for example, I don't know, Data Act or DORA for some part of economy, for the financial market, which regulation will be crucial and will give us, let's say, kick to move to build the and use the to build the cloud services, build faster cloud solution.
Yeah, thank you for questions also. If you ask me, I don't point and underline one regulation. We try to deal with some of them. First, of course, last one, it's the Data Act. But before we try to conclude, it is Digital Service Act, Digital Market Service Act, also Artificial Intelligence Act. They are still related to the computing power, to the cloud service, to the data spaces, trusted data spaces. But in my opinion, this is a very important part of work. TTC Committee, Transatlantic Technology Council. That council works in the 10 groups on many layers, but one layer is very important: global value chain. If we don't talk about the value chain, and in the same moment we try to build our European economy, that could be some gap. And we, of course, are talking about the cloud service coming from the other region than Europe, and talking about the cloud service built here in Europe. We still need to consider how data flow through the ecosystems and how that flowing, depending finally the GDP, the productivity finally. And from that perspective, the special new agreement between the United States and Europe is needed. And in my work, I suggest don't focus on the personal data, but focus on data. If we talk about data, we need to think about the non-personal data, because in the set of many data, among of massive data, 90% is fulfilled by non-personal data. In the majority, of course, they now came from the industries. But if we talk about in industrial future, of course, the focus on non-personal data coming from the industry, it's a thing. And if we talk about that kind of data, we land now in the Data Governance Act. And from that perspective, that act produced the question and the definition of data spaces. We talk about the portability, but we don't need to forget that in Europe exists basic regulation, free flow of data, non-personal data. It's a regulation approved, if I have good remember, 3 years ago. And that kind of regulation doesn't exist outside of Europe. In the special free trade agreements, some like-minded countries continue the promotion of that kind of idea. But from the European perspective, that framework compliance is needed. Of course, only flowing of data, if we accept that kind of direction, will be not productive for European economy. And I agree with that kind of concept that in Europe we try to build by that kind of regulations, the composition of that many regulations, special digital club, in which we declare our like-minded rules. But I still believe that will be not that kind of set. For example, that we agree on some standards. As I said in my first expression, first statement, we need to firstly agreed that we approve the mutual recognition as a meta rule for any standards which will be produced by in the club, for example. That is our position, and it is that deal. It's very delicate, very even difficult, but it's only one way from our perspective for European economy. If we talk about the competition among China and north part of America. Thank you.
Great, and this is the perspective. We have a European project. We have a European regulation, and of course there is in back we have TTC and this regulation which established the rules between Europe and America, and this is the good question for me. How you will going to find? You are preparing for that this a little bit, I think, changing perspective regarding the data use, data flow. It's open, but on the other hand, there are some. I suppose there will be some limitations, some rules which establish this basics in data flows. Are you prepared for that some way, or preparing for that some way?
Yeah, we are constantly in preparation. I would say that when cloud started, it has been an announcement of the change for the customers, for the market. But this works both ways, right? So the vendors, the cloud providers need to also adapt to the changing expectations coming from certain areas of the world, and this is obviously something that we consider and we try to control. When it comes to sovereignty, we've been talking so much about data, but I would like to also point out to two other pillars what we believe are equally important when it comes to digital sovereignty, right? So the first one is interoperability. So basically the fact that you are able to deploy the system among different providers, right? And it won't take you ages. So this sort of standardization of software is something that we are actively, working on. We are promoting these standards. Those standards are actually becoming widely used among industry, and this is obviously part of our role that we are seeing, right? To somehow do what's best, coming out of the cloud and make it available for the others. So that's one thing. The other thing is operational sovereignty, right? So the fact who is actually operating, who is actually having access to the infrastructure that you are using. And this is obviously a very sensitive topic, because when you look at all the contractual clauses, there are plenty of plenty of disclaimers when it comes to how it works or should work. We are doing our best to make it as clear as possible, and for the most sensitive industries, I would say the North Star here is to make it available and operated by, let's say, local players. This is something that we started to do already. For example, in Germany, together with T-Systems, and in France with Thales. Those are the first deployments of this sovereign cloud idea. So the fact that this is basically Google's technology, but operated by the local partner that has this trust already. And then finally, obviously, the data sovereignty, so to have full control over not only who has access to it, but also who is able to encrypt it. Do I feel safe with regards to the proper measures, etc., etc. So having this freedom is the third pillar that we see as equally important. And yes, this is obviously part of our strategy. I would not say that this is going to replace, let's say, global offerings, but there are obviously for the mainstream business, the cloud is already there, right? So we are all using Twitter, Spotify, and plenty of other platforms that are working fine. But yes, there is a place for these more sensitive workloads to take them into account and apply those measures as well. So yes, we as Google invest a lot in this sovereign cloud idea, and hopefully we'll be able to contribute all together when it comes to this standards creation and definition.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for all the remarks, all the information, all the perspectives. As we see, the sovereignty is very important. It's crucial. Let's look at the Ukraine, which is the country is currently fighting about the sovereignty, and it's everything is based on the sovereignty. And once again, thank you to all of you. Thank you, Francesco, for the GAIA-X presentation. Thank you, Robert, for the our government perspective, and for your perspective of the global provider, how we are going to adopt and present. Once again, thank you to all of you, and I hope that all other presentation give the ability to find out what is a good in the cloud services and IT technology. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for good discussion. Thank you.